Lucas adjusted his goggles, the familiar scent of grease and metal filling his nostrils as he worked on a maintenance panel of an aging spacecraft. He was a skilled mechanic aboard the Orbital Nexus, a bustling space station orbiting Earth, where the hum of machinery and the chatter of traders and travelers were a constant backdrop to his daily life. With a practiced hand, he tightened bolts and checked wiring, his mind wandering to the mundane routine that defined his existence. The thrill of adventure had faded long ago, leaving behind the weight of unfulfilled dreams. "Hey, Lucas, you got a minute?" called out Sam, a fellow mechanic, as he approached with a clipboard. His face was smeared with oil, and his voice held a hint of urgency. "There's a ship docked at Bay 12 that's acting up. They say it's a real piece of junk." Lucas sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sure, I'll take a look. It's probably just some wiring issue again." He followed Sam down the corridor, their footsteps echoing against the metallic walls. As they reached Bay 12, Lucas's heart sank at the sight of the battered vessel. The hull was riddled with dents, and the flickering lights suggested a deeper problem. "Looks like it's been through hell," Sam remarked, peering into the open hatch. "You think you can fix it?" "Let's find out," Lucas replied, climbing aboard. As he entered the dimly lit interior, a chill ran down his spine. The atmosphere felt heavy, almost foreboding. He began to assess the damage, his hands moving instinctively as his mind focused on the task at hand. Suddenly, a faint sound drew his attention. It was a soft, desperate voice, barely audible over the hum of the ship's failing systems. "Help, please, someone help me. Did you hear that?" Lucas asked, turning to Sam, who nodded in confusion. "Yeah, but where's it coming from?" Lucas followed the sound down a narrow corridor, his heart racing. "Stay here," he instructed, pushing forward. He reached a locked door and, without hesitation, forced it open. The sight that met his eyes was beyond anything he could have imagined. In the center of the room, illuminated by the dim glow of emergency lights, sat a young woman with shimmering skin and long, flowing hair that seemed to defy gravity. She was bound by energy restraints, her eyes wide with fear and hope. "Please," she whispered, "you must help me. I am Rhyla, Princess of Zithra." Lucas's breath caught in his throat as he took in her ethereal beauty. "Princess? What are you doing here?" "I was captured by a rogue faction," Rhyla explained, her voice trembling. "They seek to use my powers to conquer my planet. If they succeed, countless lives will be lost. You must help me escape." Lucas hesitated, the weight of her plea settling heavily on his shoulders. He was just a mechanic, a simple man who had never dreamed of becoming a hero. I don't know. This is all too much. I can't. Please, Lucas." Ryla's eyes burned with desperation. "You have the skills to free me. If you don't act, it will be too late. My people are suffering." Just then, an ominous sound echoed through the ship, footsteps approaching rapidly. Lucas's heart raced. "We need to go. Now." As he worked to free her from the restraints, doubt gnawed at him. What if he was making a mistake? What if he was putting himself in danger? But looking into Ryla's eyes, he saw a flicker of hope, a spark that ignited something deep within him. With a final twist, he released her, and she stood, her presence radiating an energy he had never encountered. "Thank you," she whispered, a soft smile forming on her lips. "Now we must hurry." Before they could move, the door burst open, revealing a towering figure, a bounty hunter clad in dark armor, his eyes glinting with malice. "There you are, Princess. You thought you could escape?" Lucas's heart raced as he positioned himself protectively in front of Rhyla. "Get away from her, foolish mechanic," the bounty hunter sneered. "You have no idea what you're getting into." Rhyla stepped forward, her posture shifting as an unseen force enveloped her. "You will not take me back," she declared, her voice steady. "Let's see what you can do," the bounty hunter taunted, lunging forward. In that moment, Lucas felt a surge of adrenaline course through him, igniting a spark of courage he didn't know he possessed. He couldn't just stand by and watch Rhyla be taken. With instinct guiding him, he grabbed a nearby wrench, ready to confront the threat. This was the moment he would choose to fight for something greater than himself. As the dim light of distant stars flickered above them, Lucas and Rhyla found refuge in the hollowed-out belly of a remote asteroid. The metallic walls hummed with the remnants of ancient machinery, remnants from a time when the asteroid had served a purpose long forgotten. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the faint glow of Lucas's improvised lantern, casting shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of the cosmos. "Are you sure this is safe?" Lucas asked, glancing around nervously. His hands fidgeted, still marked by grease and grime, the tools of his trade hanging at his side like a soldier's weapons. Rhyla, sitting cross-legged on a tattered piece of fabric she had salvaged from the wreckage, looked up at him with a determined glint in her emerald eyes. "This is the best we can do for now. We need to strategize, and we need to train," she replied, her voice steady, though deep down, she felt the weight of their situation. Lucas sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair. He was still grappling with the gravity of their predicament. "Train for what? I'm just a mechanic. I fix ships, not fight a war." "You underestimate yourself, Lucas," Rhyla said, her tone softening. "You have a strength within you that you've yet to discover. We all do. The fight for Zithra requires unity and courage. Let me show you." With that, she rose gracefully, her movements fluid like water in a stream. She beckoned him to follow her to a cleared space in the cavernous chamber, where the remnants of machinery lay scattered like broken dreams. "First, you must learn to focus your energy," she instructed, guiding him into a stance. "Channel your emotions. Fear, anger, even hope, into a single point of focus." Lucas mimicked her posture hesitantly, feeling foolish. "Easy for you to say. You have powers I can only dream of." "Everyone has their own strength," Rhyla insisted, her voice firm. "Just as I have my abilities, you have your own skills. You've repaired countless ships, you've saved lives. That is a power too." As they practiced, Rhyla guided Lucas through breathing exercises. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the chaos of his thoughts and the turmoil of their escape. "Inhale," Rhyla instructed, her voice calming him. "Hold and exhale. Feel the energy around you." Lucas focused, feeling the cool air fill his lungs. Slowly, he began to visualize the energy swirling around him, like the hum of the machines he was so familiar with. He opened his eyes, a flicker of determination igniting within him. "Okay, I think I understand." "Good. Now let's try something more challenging," Rhyla said, smiling with encouragement. As they continued their training, the hours blurred into one another, their bond deepening with each shared challenge and each laugh. Lucas began to see glimpses of his potential, the pieces of himself he had never acknowledged before. When dusk fell in the asteroid's abyss, a group of freedom fighters unexpectedly emerged from the shadows, their faces etched with the lines of hardship and determination. They wore tattered uniforms, remnants of a once unified force now scattered and broken. "Who are you?" one of them barked, a tall figure with a scar running across his cheek. "I'm Rhyla, and this is Lucas. We're here to fight against the tyrant," Rhyla declared, her voice steady despite the sudden tension. The leader narrowed his eyes, sizing them up. "We've heard whispers of a princess in hiding. If you're true, then you must help us?" Lucas nodded vigorously, feeling a surge of purpose. "We have knowledge and resources to share. We can build a plan together." As the sun set behind the asteroid, the group gathered, sharing stories of their struggles against the oppressive regime. Lucas and Rhyla listened intently, absorbing every detail. They exchanged ideas, strategies, and hopes, forming a blueprint for their revolt on Zithra. "Together, we can strike at the heart of the tyrant's forces," Rhyla urged, her voice filled with conviction. But just as the group began to plot their next move, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows loomed outside, and an ominous silence fell over them. Suddenly, the door burst open with a deafening crash, revealing the bounty hunter and his mercenaries, weapons drawn. "Found you," he sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "You thought you could hide?" Panic surged through the room, but Rhyla stepped forward, her stance resolute. "We won't go down without a fight." Lucas felt his heart race as he reached for a tool, a wrench that felt insignificant against the mercenaries' blasters. "We need to get out of here," he shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. But before they could react, Rhyla raised her hands, her energy flaring to life, illuminating the darkened space. She unleashed a wave of energy that knocked the mercenaries back, showcasing her power for the first time. "Rhyla, wait. They'll know what you can do," Lucas warned, but it was too late. The battle erupted, chaos reigning as they fought for their lives, their hopes, and their freedom. With determination, Rhyla and Lucas fought side by side, their bond now forged in fire. They would not be captured, and they would not allow the tyrant's regime to win. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, and as they narrowly escaped, the stakes of their journey had just risen dramatically. The hunt for Rhyla was far from over. As the stolen ship hurtled through the vastness of space, Lucas sat at the control panel, his fingers dancing over the worn keys. Beside him, Rhyla perched on the edge of her seat, her vibrant eyes filled with determination and fear. The freedom fighters, a ragtag group of rebels who had joined their cause, bustled behind them, preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. "Adjust the frequency on the hyperdrive," Rhyla instructed, her voice steady despite the uncertainty surrounding them. "We need to ensure we arrive undetected." Lucas nodded, focusing on the screen before him. He could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on him. Not only were they risking their lives, but they were also carrying the hopes of an entire planet. As the ship glided toward Zithra, images of the devastation caused by the tyrant's rule haunted his thoughts. He had seen the remnants of a world in despair, and it fueled his resolve. "Look!" shouted one of the freedom fighters, a tall man with a scruffy beard named Jack. He pointed out the viewport, where the outline of Zithra appeared against the starry backdrop. The vibrant blue and green of the planet contrasted sharply with the darkness of space. "We're almost there." Rhyla leaned closer to the window, her heart racing at the sight of her home. "I can feel the energy of the planet," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's struggling, but it's still alive." As they approached the atmosphere, Lucas maneuvered the ship with care, descending through the clouds that cloaked Zithra. The landscape below revealed scars of war, smoldering ruins where cities once thrived, fields that lay barren, and the distant sounds of conflict echoing through the air. "Prepare for landing," Lucas called out, his voice firm. The crew sprang into action, securing their gear and readying themselves for the fight that awaited them. Once the ship touched down on a secluded patch of land, Lucas turned to Rhyla. "This is it. Are you ready?" She met his gaze, her expression a mix of fear and courage. "I must be. For my people." With a nod of determination, they disembarked. The moment they stepped onto the surface of Zithra, Lucas was struck by the planet's natural beauty, a stark contrast to its turmoil. Lush forests and sparkling rivers whispered of a time long past when peace reigned. But in the air lingered a palpable tension, a reminder of the tyrant's oppressive grip. As they moved through the underbrush, Rhyla began to share stories of her world. "Zithra used to be a beacon of hope in the galaxy," she explained, her voice filled with nostalgia. "Our people revered the balance of energy, harnessing it to flourish. But ever since the tyrant took control, everything has changed." "What's he like?" Lucas asked, trying to understand the man they were up against. "He's ruthless," Rhyla replied, her eyes darkening. "He seeks power above all else. He has twisted our culture, using fear to control the population. But he underestimates the strength of those who fight back." As they trekked deeper into Zithra, they encountered remnants of the resistance, people hiding in the shadows, whispering about the rebellion. Lucas watched as Rhyla interacted with them, her presence igniting a spark of hope in their eyes. She was not just a princess. She was a symbol of resistance, and the people rallied around her. After hours of navigating the dense foliage, they reached a secluded encampment where the freedom fighters awaited. Jack stepped forward, his expression grim. We've gathered intelligence on the tyrant's stronghold. It's heavily guarded, but we believe we can create a diversion. Lucas felt a surge of adrenaline. We need to strike hard and fast. We can't give him a chance to regroup. Rhyla nodded, her gaze resolute. We'll need to coordinate with the other factions. If we unite, we stand a chance? As they formulated their plan, Lucas felt a new sense of belonging. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a vital part of something greater. The fight was not only for Rhyla's freedom but also for the future of Zithra and perhaps the entire universe. However, as they began to finalize their strategy, a nagging feeling settled in Lucas's gut. The tyrant would not be easily defeated. He could sense the weight of impending betrayal lurking in the shadows, but he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. They had come too far to turn back now. With the sun sinking below the horizon, casting an orange hue over the landscape, they prepared for the confrontation that awaited them in the capital city. Lucas glanced at Rhyla, who stood before the gathering of freedom fighters, her presence commanding. He knew that together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with courage and hope. The throne room of the tyrant was a dark spectacle, a sprawling expanse filled with opulence that mocked the suffering of Zithra's people. Its high ceilings were adorned with grotesque sculptures, and statues of past rulers stood as silent witnesses to the oppression that loomed over the planet. The air was thick with tension as Lucas and Rhyla were brought before the tyrant, their wrists bound in energy restraints that pulsed ominously with each heartbeat. Seated on a throne made of blackened crystal, the tyrant's eyes glimmered with malevolence as he surveyed his captives. So, the little princess and her mechanic have finally come to pay their respects, he sneered, a cruel smile curling his lip. Did you really think you could escape my grasp? Rhyla's heart raced, fear gnawing at her courage. She glanced at Lucas, who stood defiantly beside her, his jaw clenched in resolve. You won't get away with this, he declared, his voice steady despite the dire circumstances. We will fight back. You'll never harness her powers. Fight back. The tyrant laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. You misunderstand, mechanic. Her powers are mine to command. With her energy manipulation, I will crush the rebellion and rule this galaxy. He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto Rhyla. And you, dear princess, will be the key to my dominion. Panic surged through Rhyla as the tyrant's intentions became clear. Memories of her home, her people, and the burden of her lineage weighed heavily on her heart. You'll never control me, she whispered, finding strength in her defiance, though doubt lingered in her mind. Ah, but I already have, the tyrant retorted, gesturing to the guards who flanked them. Take them away. Let them witness the destruction of their precious rebellion. As they were dragged away, Lucas felt a surge of determination. He had always been a mechanic, skilled with machines, but this was different. He needed to think like a strategist. In the dimly lit prison cell, as shadows danced along the walls, Lucas whispered to Rhyla, "We can't give up. There has to be a way to escape." Rhyla nodded, her anxiety momentarily subsiding at his words. "I trust you, Lucas. What do you have in mind?" "I can override the energy restraints," he replied, glancing around the cell for anything he could use. "If we can get free, we can regroup with the others." "But how?" Rhyla asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Lucas scanned the room again, his mechanic's instincts kicking in. "There's always a way. Just give me a moment." He crouched down, examining the energy conduits that ran along the walls. "If I can access the control panel in the next room, I might be able to bypass the restraints." "Then we need to create a distraction," Rhyla said, her eyes shining with newfound hope. "I can use my energy to create an illusion. It might buy you enough time." Lucas paused, considering the plan. "That could work. Just be careful. If they catch on, it could be dangerous." "Dangerous is what we signed up for," Rhyla replied, her voice firm. "Let's do this." As Lucas prepared to execute his plan, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. He had never been a hero, just a simple mechanic, but now he was part of something much larger than himself. Rhyla's courage inspired him, and he vowed to do everything in his power to protect her. With a deep breath, Rhyla focused her energy, her hands glowing faintly. She conjured an image of a massive explosion echoing through the halls outside their cell. The guards, caught off guard by the sudden chaos, rushed to investigate, leaving their post momentarily unattended. Lucas seized the opportunity. Now, he urged, and Rhyla concentrated, the energy restraints flickering as he worked on the control panel. As soon as the restraints fell away, they bolted for the door, hearts pounding in unison. This way, Lucas gestured, leading her through the darkened corridors of the palace. Each step was a gamble, and the distant sounds of alarm echoed behind them, a reminder that they were not yet safe. In the chaos of their escape, Lucas's mind raced with strategies and possibilities. They had to make it to the hidden bunker where the remaining freedom fighters were regrouping. But as they dashed through the labyrinthine halls, shadows loomed ever closer, and doubt began to seep in. Would they make it in time? Would they find their allies, or would they be caught once more? In the depths of Zithra's capital, the stakes had never been higher. Lucas and Rhyla ran, driven by the weight of their mission and the bond they had forged in the fires of adversity. With every step, they felt the pulse of destiny guiding them toward an uncertain future, but one thing remained clear: they would fight for their freedom, together. The atmosphere around the tyrant's stronghold was charged with tension as Lucas and Rhyla stood at the forefront of the assembled freedom fighters. The sun hung low, casting an ominous shadow over the fortress, a symbol of oppression that had loomed over Zithra for far too long. Rhyla, her eyes aflame with determination, raised her hand, channeling energy that shimmered in the air like a living entity. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for every soul suffering under his rule, she shouted, her voice echoing against the cold, hard walls of the stronghold. The fighters responded with a unified roar, their spirits ignited by her words. Lucas felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He could hear the steady beat of his heart, each pulse a reminder of the stakes. "We need to stick together and follow Rhyla's lead," he called out, glancing at the faces around him. They were filled with both fear and fierce resolve, mirroring his own emotions. As they charged forward, Rhyla unleashed a wave of energy that surged like a tidal wave against the stronghold's defenses. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable buckled under her power, creating a breach wide enough for the fighters to pour through. Lucas was at her side, adrenaline coursing through him, urging him to keep up with her ethereal grace. "Lucas, watch your left," Rhyla shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos as she redirected her focus to fend off a group of approaching guards. Lucas spun around just in time to engage one of the guards, using his mechanical skills to disable the enemy's weapon. With a swift kick, he sent the guard sprawling, but the battle was unforgiving. As the clash of steel and cries of the wounded filled the air, Lucas felt a sharp pain jolt through his side. He grunted, stumbling backward, but his gaze quickly searched for Rhyla. "Lucas?" Rhyla's voice pierced through the din of battle. He watched as she was surrounded by a cluster of soldiers, desperately trying to fend them off. The sight drove him to push through the pain, rallying his strength. "Keep pushing forward," he yelled, his voice strained but resolute. "We can't lose her." With renewed determination, Lucas charged towards Rhyla, but before he could reach her, the tyrant's guards overwhelmed her. The sight of her struggling against their grasp ignited a primal instinct within him. "Let her go," he bellowed, swinging a makeshift weapon he had fashioned from the ship's debris. The guard fell, but the relentless tide of fighters pressed on. As Rhyla was dragged away, her eyes locked onto his. "Lucas!" she cried, desperation laced in her tone. The moment felt suspended in time, a vow of unyielding loyalty exchanged between them even amidst the chaos. "Stay strong. I'll find you," he promised, his voice cutting through the chaos, but the words felt hollow as she vanished from his sight. With Rhyla captured, Lucas felt the weight of despair pressing down on him, but he refused to falter. He turned to the freedom fighters. "We need to regroup and create a distraction. We can't let them take her." They formed a tight circle, strategizing quickly under the mounting pressure. "We'll have to create a diversion. If we can draw the guards away, we'll have a chance to rescue her," Lucas suggested, his mind racing with possibilities. As they executed their plan, Rhyla sat in the dark confines of her cell, her heart pounding in her chest. Alone and afraid, she closed her eyes, drawing on the strength of her lineage. Memories of her ancestors filled her mind, their faces a beacon of hope. She remembered the stories of her heritage, of warriors who had faced insurmountable odds and triumphed. Allowing herself to feel the energy within, she began to channel it, a soft glow illuminating the dark space around her. "I will not be a pawn," she whispered, a fierce resolve blossoming within her. With a deep breath, she unleashed a wave of energy that shattered the bonds holding her captive. Outside, guards were distracted by the commotion, their attention pulled away from her cell. Rhyla seized the moment, slipping out into the shadows, her heart racing with hope as she navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the stronghold. Just as Lucas and the freedom fighters created their diversion, Rhyla emerged, determined to find him. The moment felt electric, their fates intertwined once more as she spotted him battling the tyrant's guards. "Lucas!" she shouted, her voice filled with urgency. He turned, his eyes widening in disbelief and relief. "Rhyla!" he exclaimed, joy flooding his heart as he dispatched the last guard in his path. Their reunion was brief, but the urgency of their situation loomed large. "We have to find the tyrant. He's still out there," Rhyla urged, her gaze fierce as she took her place at Lucas's side once more. Together, they prepared for the final confrontation, knowing that their greatest challenge lay ahead. In the dimly lit throne room, the atmosphere was thick with tension as Rhyla faced her brother for the first time in years. The tyrant, cloaked in shadows, stood atop a dais, his eyes glinting with a mixture of resentment and recognition. "Rhyla," he began, his voice a chilling blend of familiarity and malice. "You've come to challenge me? After all I've done for our family?" Ryla's heart raced. "You're not the brother I remember," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "You've become a monster, twisted by power and hatred." Lucas stood beside her, fists clenched, ready to defend her at a moment's notice. "We won't let you continue this reign of terror, no matter who you are," he declared, his voice resolute. The tyrant's lips curled into a sneer. "You don't understand, do you? I was cast aside, abandoned to the darkness. I took what was mine, and now I will reclaim our legacy." His eyes flickered with a dark light, a reflection of the chaotic energy that coursed through him. Rhyla shook her head, her heart heavy with sorrow. "You were never abandoned. You chose this path. You could still make things right." "Enough," he thundered, raising his hand. Dark energy surged around him, forming tendrils that threatened to ensnare them. "You will bow before your true ruler." With a fierce resolve, Rhyla stepped forward, her own energy beginning to pulse around her. "I will not bow to tyranny. You are my brother, but I will fight you to protect my people." Lucas moved closer to her, feeling the intensity of her power. "Rhyla, together," he urged, knowing that their combined strengths could create something greater than either could achieve alone. As if ignited by his words, Rhyla closed her eyes, summoning the energy within her. It flared brilliantly, illuminating the room with a radiant light. Lucas, sensing the surge, focused on his mechanical instincts, crafting a plan that intertwined with Rhyla's energy manipulation. "Let's do this," he said, determination flooding his voice. "Channel your energy through me." With a deep breath, Rhyla nodded, and they connected their powers. The energy between them swirled and pulsed, a brilliant fusion of light and mechanical brilliance. Together, they launched a wave of energy toward the tyrant, who barely had time to react. The impact resonated through the throne room, shaking the very foundations of the stronghold. The tendrils of dark energy recoiled, and the tyrant staggered back, momentarily stunned. "What is this power?" he gasped, fear creeping into his voice. This is the light of Zithara, Rhyla shouted, her voice strong. This is the power of love and unity. With renewed vigor, Lucas and Rhyla pressed their advantage, channeling their energy into a concentrated beam that surged toward the tyrant. He raised his hands in desperation, trying to summon more dark energy, but it was too late. The beam struck him squarely, engulfing him in a blinding light. As the energy collided with him, something extraordinary happened. The dark forces that had twisted him began to unravel, revealing the brother Rhyla once knew, buried beneath layers of pain and anger. In that moment, he cried out, "Rhyla, help me!" But they were too far gone. The light enveloped him, and with it came a thunderous explosion that shook the very core of Zithara. The oppressive energy binding the planet began to dissolve, releasing the spirits of those who had suffered under the tyrant's rule. As the dust settled, Rhyla and Lucas stood amidst the remnants of the battle, breathing heavily. They had won, but at a cost. Rhyla looked around, tears in her eyes as she felt the fleeting presence of her brother slip away. "I wanted to save him," she whispered, her voice cracking. Lucas placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You did what you could. His choices were his own. Now we must focus on rebuilding." In the aftermath, the oppressed energy of Zithara surged, wrapping around Rhyla and Lucas, intertwining their fates even further. As they emerged from the ruins of the stronghold, they found the freedom fighters rallying, their spirits lifted by the liberation of their planet. Together, Rhyla and Lucas stood before the people of Zithara, their hearts united. They understood that while the battle against tyranny had been won, the fight for justice and peace was only beginning. "We will lead together," Rhyla declared, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "We will unite our worlds, and ensure that love and courage guide our way." Lucas nodded, his own heart swelling with pride. They were no longer just a mechanic and a princess, they were leaders of a new era, destined to inspire countless others to rise against oppression.